Agenda, if you like, as soon as you're ready.
Thank you. So, dream to dare. So, pop over to the agenda and explain what we're going to be doing this evening. So, a little welcome and introduction from myself, Craig, and Louise. And then we'll head into our discussion and debate with the expert panel, Craig and Louise. And then we'll go through a couple of key takeaways, actionable tools and resources. And finally, our final Q&A and close. So let's jump in. So meet the speakers. Who are you seeing today? Well, first of all, you've got Dr. Craig Knight, a chartered registered doctor of workplace psychology, and quite possibly one of the most fascinating individuals I've had the pleasure of knowing so far.
And then we have Louise Lavaroni. And from IT to engineering to one of the biggest companies in the world, Louise has made a success of it. And now, as the driving force behind Scotaly, she's challenging the acceptable model of business. Louise dreams and she dares.
Thanks, Craig. I've never heard so many lovely things said about me. I'd love to introduce you to Vicky, who's our session chair for tonight. Vicky is an outstanding events professional. She is passionate about creating memorable experiences and meaningful conversations. And tonight, as an example of that, she's worked privately and personally, and she now works at the Ingliston Country Estate, which is a fantastic place.
Thank you, Louise.
Just a little about me. I'm not going to go through all of this slide. You'll hear me waffle quite a lot tonight, and this should just give an indication that I know a little bit about what you'll be hearing me talk about. So there you go.
Thanks, Craig. Okay, over to me. One thing that's been consistent throughout my 25 years in my career has been my curiosity. Curiosity didn't just kill the cat, but it actually allowed me to work in 4 different sectors: the computing sector, the aerospace sector, the tech sector, and the retail sector. It also allowed me to live and work in 4 different countries. I've worked in the USA, I've worked in England, Germany, and Italy. Curiosity also taught me 3 languages. It taught me German, it taught me Italian, and it also taught me English, which I'm still improving. And curiosity's taken me to Italy, where I now live. Now, despite the image in the centre here, which is actually of a beautiful vineyard in Italy, I don't actually live in the vineyard, but many of my friends would actually debate that I probably do, based on the photographic evidence that comes from Instagram on the weekend, but that's a whole different story. So Italy is where the magic happened, and it's where I launched my own startup called Scotaly. And Scotaly helps premium brands enter or expand into continental Europe. Was there a master plan for any of this? Certainly not. But what I did say was yes to many opportunities, including this one. Over to you, Vicky.
Oh, thank you, Louise. So my background's mostly been events, 20 years in events. And it's had the most focus on corporate events, from like your business roundtables to 3-day conferences around the world. One of my favourites was in Washington, DC just a few years ago, where I got the chance to work with the Chief of Staff of the White House as one of my keynote speakers. And I moved there onto hospitality. Hospitality, a little bit new to that, a little bit exciting, but still within the events world as the new corporate relations manager there. So I've literally done the leap from working with CEOs to brides. And right now I'm trying to work out which kind of person is the most demanding. So I'm still trying to figure that one out, but I am loving it so far.
Excellent. Thanks, Vicky. So I'd love to share with you one of my favourite quotes here, which is, "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek." I'll just repeat that. The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. What comes to mind when you hear this quote? For most people, I imagine it's probably fear, because caves are dark, unknown environments. Caves are things that you enter at your own risk. But for me, I see opportunity disguised as fear. And this quote also reminds me of the film or the cartoon, depending on how old you are, which is Aladdin, where Aladdin enters the forbidden cave of wonder in search of treasure. And for sure, he finds the treasure, but he also finds something more important. He finds a magic lamp, and that magic lamp has the potential to change his life. The cave he feared to enter held the opportunity he was seeking all along. Do you have a cave that you fear to enter? Or do you have a lamp that you're searching for? Be careful what you wish for.
Indeed so. Dreams, Louise, they've been with us for centuries. And your highlight of Aladdin sort of brings Arabia to mind. And Arabia in the Middle East is a crucible of dreams, isn't it? You probably remember Joseph interpreting the dreams of the Pharaoh. And then we moved to Macedonia and Alexander the Great, who wouldn't go into battle unless he had a propitious dream correctly interpreted. And we still dream now, and dreams, as we probably know, aren't entirely good for us all the time. You can have negative dreams, you can have nightmares you find hard to cope with that can feed into anxiety and depression. You can have sleep disruption and mood impact. But dreams are also positive, and usually positive, in fact. Dreams will help you with emotional regulation. They'll help process. They'll help reduce the ideas of negative experience. It's called overnight therapy, the dream. It helps resilience and mood stability. Dreams also help strengthen memories and foster problem solving. This is one of the key things. If you wake somebody from REM, rapid eye movement sleep, their creativity is 15 to 35% better than it is during the course of the day. And dreams are also a source of rehearsal and adaptation, where we can simulate threats and scenarios. And this helps us with improved waking skills and different emotional flexibility levels.
So we're moving on to a little poll. So a totally scientific horoscope, completely scientifically backed. So if I pop this poll up, and if everyone could reply to it, great, starting to see all the results come through. And perfect. Got everyone's reply now. So here are your results. I'm going to share it. If everyone can see this, Louise, can you see that?
I can see that. The totally scientific horoscope, Vicky.
Totally scientific, absolutely backed. And if you look at that, my goodness, everyone has got a little mix of everything.
I'm very surprised there's no other Geminis in there.
I know, there's only one of you. So I'll stop sharing that now, Louise, and we'll move back to you.
Excellent. Thanks, Vicky. So you'll probably have guessed by now that I'm a Gemini. I'm a Gemini who loves to talk, who's very extroverted, and who loves to be around people. But whether or not you believe in horoscopes is not really the point here. The point is all about trying to understand yourself, because that's really what matters. My husband knows me very well, and he knows that I struggle to sit still for very long. And if I haven't started a new project within 6 months, it's actually him. He gets nervous. Dreaming is one thing, but knowing how you're wired can help you to understand and how to fulfill your dreams. I get energy from new ideas, from conversations and progress. And if you sit with me long enough, we'll probably be sure to start something together.
Well, horoscopes also date back to Arabia, Mesopotamia, in fact, about 2,000 years before the Common Era, so coinciding with the pharaohs and the pyramids. And scientifically, they hold as much water as a dry sieve. You know, they're almost useless, but people believe in them. And there's an awful lot of psychological power in belief. And what people will often do with horoscopes is adopt some of the trends they're supposed to have because of what their horoscope tells them. So you might, for example, be a Taurian. And because you're a Taurian, you therefore assume that you are going to be stubborn, and you're going to be difficult, and you're going to be sensual, and you're going to be one of the people that sort of is in sort of the middle of the team, so you don't have to lead and you don't have to be too far at the back, because that's what you're expected to be, even though there's very little physical evidence or scientific evidence to help you do that. And now we have different tools that look at personality, different personality instruments. We have the humanistic style of tool, which looks at the positive side of things, how things are. We look at the Freudian, Jungian, psychodynamic type of approach, which looks at things you can control and those that drive you that you have no control over. So we can control our superego, but the id, the inner chimp, somebody once called it, drives us, and we find it very difficult to control. And the best models are the latest scientific ones that look at core elements of our personality and behavior. And this is called the ocean model, or the canoe model of the big five. It's called openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. And these traits are stable across cultures and lifespan. You can predict to a certain level life's outcome from these. If you're a highly conscientious person, you'll tend to have a better health pattern and a better career success than most people. But all of these things change over time, and you can change any single one of your personality characteristics, which makes personality instruments unstable and unreliable. So if you look at the very bottom right of that slide, BPS and APA, you see the British Psychological Society and the American Psychological Association. And if your personality instrument doesn't have the stamp of one of those two, it ain't worth the paper it's written on. And never, ever put your faith in a personality tool. It is commonplace in business to take one of the most popular personality tools, which people call a test and isn't, and look for what's called a high D, which stands for dominance. Any company that does that is heading for a fall. It's a nonsense. Personality instruments are useful litmus tests at best. And if they don't have the stamp, they can be positive folly. You might as well use a horoscope.
So another wee poll, dream or dare. So the next poll I'm asking everyone is, what question sounds most like you? Is it, what if you fail? What if you succeed? What if it's too late? But what if you never try? So which one resonates the best with yourself? If you can reply to that. Perfect, starting to see some results come through, and I will share these. So I'm going to share these with you now. You will see we've got mostly, what if I fail? What if I succeed? That's a big fear there. What if I never try? And what if I fail? That's what most people are replying back with. Back to you.
Thanks for that, Vicky. Looks like we've got lots of optimists in the audience. What if I succeed? Excellent. So let's talk about that four-letter word that begins with F, fear. So I've moved abroad 4 times. First time was at the age of 21 when I moved to the US of A, and it was daunting. Fast forward, I left a career after building it for 15 years, but I survived and I really thrived when I left. Starting my own business, well, that's clearly new for me, but I've got 25 years of experience that will help me on that roller coaster of entrepreneurship. The point is, none of this has happened by chance. I had to get out my comfort zone and I had to try and build my confidence. And confidence only builds and moves when you take action. Confidence comes after you act. In fact, I actually think it's the reward for taking action. It's almost the gift you get for taking action. Your confidence starts to build. In my university days, I read a book on the screen here, you'll see, by Susan Jeffers. Just maybe a show of hands if anybody's read it. Okay, oh, there's a few people in the audience that's read it. Excellent, that's great. Well, this book, obviously I'm not getting any commission on the back of this for anybody who has read the book, but it's a great book that I'd love to tell you a little bit about. Feel the fear and do it anyway. This book helped me to understand fear. At the time, I was wrestling with the fear of failure, the fear of missing out, and the fear of actually making mistakes. Because the transition from high school to university is not necessarily an easy one for most people. I learned that fear is not actually a stop sign, okay? So it doesn't stop you, or it shouldn't stop you in your tracks. It's a sign that you're actually about to grow and to get out your comfort zone. I also believe that there's no such thing as a bad decision, maybe just a misguided one, or one that's based on our emotions, our thoughts, and our feelings at a particular time. But maybe Craig's got something more to say on that.
It's a really good point, I think, Louise. Fear is a fascinating emotion in itself. I'll go back to your slide for a minute while we look at it. Fear is about 40% genetic. I used to know someone who studied spiders, and she would point to a spider and say, that's the brave one, that's the bully, that's the coward, always the last one to go out. And humans have a similar kind of thing. There are certainly innate traits, but mostly it's contextual and environmental. Nobody is born frightened of those spiders. We learn that. Nobody is born frightened of the dark. And to an extent, nobody is born frightened of taking a dare. Everybody would be prepared to take one, we tend to talk ourselves out of it as we go through life.
I've got another question. Somebody's popped up with a question here, if you're happy for me to interject. Is that okay? So, in uncertain times, why do some people thrive on risk while others freeze?
Risk. It's a similar kind of thing. Whenever we move through life, we have certain, let's deal with the genetic factors first of all. And some people are more disposed to take risk and to handle fear than others. And some people are disposed to rush in faster than others. But again, mostly they're not. And as we go through psychology, and even as we go through this talk today, I expect, we'll find out that the most important thing for Homo sapiens is other Homo sapiens. We are an incredibly sociable animal. And the more support we get from the people that we trust and that trust us, the more likely we are to take risks, to confront fear. Now, whatever that fear is, if you're with somebody you love and that person is threatened by somebody, you are much more likely to stand in front of and protect that person if you rate them. And they're going to do the same for you. So if you can surround yourself with people that you rate and that like you, that is one of the best progenitors of doing things well and succeeding and handling fear and risk in life. We'll talk more about risk as we go through in a moment, but that's the best starting point, if that helps.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Craig.
Excellent. So we're now going to move on and we're going to talk about risk versus reward. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this little mouse here you see on the screen, because a mouse moves when staying put in a position is uncomfortable. And I actually think we're a bit like this little mouse here. We follow the same sorts of patterns. We like to stay in our comfort zones because it feels familiar, because the unknown is actually quite a scary place. And there has to be some sort of discomfort for us to want to and need to take action. When I'm typically faced with a big decision in life, I tend to ask myself this question in the middle here: what is the worst that can actually happen? The answer is usually never as bad as I first imagined it. And if it doesn't kill me, I'll probably tend to do it. On the screen here, you'll see Sir Richard Branson, who is an entrepreneur that I admire, and I tend to follow his approaches because he's got a famous phrase, which is, "Screw it, let's do it." Now, I don't think Richard Branson was telling us to ignore risks when he said, "Screw it, let's do it," but more, don't let fear make the decision for you. Don't let fear take over and take control. And I bet we've all been there at some point in our lives. My theory is that fear is normal, but regret is optional. What do you think, Craig?
I like that. I like that quite a lot, actually. Certainly the thing is that when you're exposed to risk, when you're exposed to fear and how to handle it, it's shaped by feelings. Discomfort is important. Excitement is important. In psychological terms, what we call arousal is important. You don't start a new company when you're not feeling bothered. You don't go into a casino when you're just bored. There's a level of excitement and thrill involved with all of those things. And although we should try to do it, risk tends not to have all that much to do with logic all that often. You'll see Carnarvon's first year there. What they found is that we are risk averse for gains. So that if somebody gave you 20 quid and they said, well, I'll tell you what, here's the toss of a coin. If you guess right, I'll double it to 40. If you guess wrong, back to 0. Even though we've actually lost nothing, we'll tend to keep hold of the 20 quid. We're risk averse. But we're risk seeking for losses. If you lose that £20, let's say in a bet, and somebody says, I'll toss you for double or quits, we are much more likely to take that bet. And there are two systems for handling risk. System 1 and System 2. System 2 is slow, and System 2 applies logic to something. Very few people tend to do that. Most people run risk through their emotions, how they feel, through their heuristics, their general rules of thumb, and through bias. And by relying on that incredibly unreliable thing, gut instinct. Do not do that. Turn to logic. Think of the casino again for a moment. If you go into a casino and you throw money on a roulette table, you have no control whatever what goes on over that roulette table. That's stupid risk. It's much more sensible to go and play cards. Because at cards, you're given a hand. And you can look at that hand and have a much better idea of whether it's worth taking the risk, whether it's worth a dare to see if you can extend your money. So when it comes to risk, never play roulette. Always play cards in life and business.
Craig, talking of games, I've got a question for you before we move on. Tell me about the game Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Why is it some people get to the $64,000 question, some move on, and some decide to take the money?
Isn't it extraordinary how people do that? It's absolutely right. People that arrive with nothing and at worst can go home with nothing, they've lost nothing. But they will get to a level in that game and be absolutely terrified about going further because of this natural aversion to risk that human beings have. There's that beautiful state of jeopardy. And will people be brave enough to go forward? And game shows are predicated on it. It's not just things like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. The chase is built on that as well. Are you going to take that? Are you going to bet and take the higher money and risk being caught? You've nothing to lose. Why wouldn't you take the higher bet? But people don't. And it's that idea of innate jeopardy that's built within all of us, the psychology, the psyche of us all, that drives these programs forward.
Brilliant. Thanks for that. Okay, I'd now love to tell you a little bit about growth through challenges and how that's impacted me. But first of all, I want to know, is there any other middle children in the audience? Oh, there's one. I can see one there. Excellent, so I'm not alone. Well, I am the middle child. You'll see me here. I have two brothers, one older, one younger, and me as the middle child. And as the middle child, you quickly learn two things. First one, no one is coming to save you. And the second one, if you want something, you're going to need to learn how to negotiate. Both of these skills served me well in life because years later, they became the perfect training ground for a 20-year career in aerospace working for Rolls-Royce. In my early 20s, I was the only female responsible for a 3-shift pattern of about 50 men in each. Men who were really traditional and actually old enough to be my dad. I quickly learned how to be accepted, how to be heard, and most importantly, how to be respected. Talk about challenges and imposter syndrome. I faced it all. A few years later, I won the golden ticket. I was accepted into Amazon. Having passed the loops, if you know, you know, the loops is the name given to the extensive Amazon interview process, where you need to raise the bar, but not literally. I honestly thought that my 20 years experience would be my biggest advantage. It wasn't. I was wrong. It almost became my biggest limitation. Because Amazon doesn't care about your past successes. They ask you, can you learn? Can you adapt? Can you experiment? And can you fail fast? And can you do all of this before lunchtime? If you can, then you're an Amazonian. That's what a true Amazonian is. And I was proud to be an orange badge holder, so 5 years experience as an Amazon leader up until November 2025. In November 2025, I decided to leave the corporate jungle and to go solo. But joking aside, the ability to learn, the ability to experiment, and the ability to fail fast doesn't just apply to Amazonians. We should all be thinking about polishing these skills because it helps us to survive in our respective corporate jungles. What do you think, Craig?
Yes, I think quite a lot about that, and I think you've hit on something that's on this slide very well, different identities. You mentioned 3 identities there about being a middle child, about being young, female in a male-dominated environment, and about the incredibly flexible world required of you in Amazon. And all of those things speak to what we're going to talk about here. We have a number of different identities, tens of different identities. Let's look at 3. Let's look at the identities we have in the workplace, where we'll identify more or less closely with the people we work with those that manage us, and with the organisation that employs us. There are borders or boundaries between those as well that are more or less permeable. If, for example, you work for a strongly unionised plant and you have a skill set that is unlikely to see it promoted off the shop floor, you tend to identify incredibly strongly with that skill set. You are a lathe turner, whatever it happens to be, and that matters an awful lot because it's really hard to get out of that and move into management. Right? You probably want to. Whereas if you're an aspirational white-collar worker looking to get on the management ladder, you can look up and you can identify management to see you have a very permeable boundary. You can get to that quite easily. But there you tend to identify up. But however you do it, if you like the people you work with, for, and around, you have what's called congruent identity across those three work identities, you're going to have a much more pleasant job than somebody who doesn't. And identities apply at home as well, and just as much, and just as positively or negatively. How well grounded are people? What are your relationships like? Do you share the same values? Think, for example, of, say, the Brexit vote in the UK and how split families were with that. Or in Scotland, for example, when the independence debate was running, and you had families split for yes and no. How comfortable is that to live with? Sometimes, just like at work, home identities can be positive and negative, and who you identify with, even as a parent, you have children that you love equally, don't necessarily like them the same. Identities are crucial. And the one that we tend to ignore are our play identities. What do we like at play when we relax? This is the most us that we can probably be. What are we when we're doing what we want? When we're sitting by the fire reading a book? When we're climbing a mountain? When we're just going out partying with friends? What is that person like? And how can you realize those identities and be happy across the whole board? Because all of this, if you have a comfortable identity, you tend to have less self-doubt and more self-belief. And that can be good, and it can be bad. If you have too much self-doubt, that's incredibly debilitating. You will tend to undermine yourself. You'll develop imposter syndrome and so forth. If you have no self-doubt and complete self-confidence, then you tend to be prone to hubris and making hideous mistakes through being overconfident. You need quite a lot of self-belief and a little bit of doubt to drive you on, what Bandura called self-efficacy. And if you get self-efficacy, then you're really onto something, because you can then start to drive forward. You have a realistic interpretation of yourself. You have this interplay going on, and you can understand context. We have the position with the imposter syndrome at work. Well, I'm not worthy of this job. But you can have just as much imposter syndrome at home. I'll see personal clients who feel they are an imposter parent or an imposter carer, all kinds of things. A level of expertise is incredibly good for us. You need to drive, look at that last section in terms of well-being, through the overconfident, anxious state. There's nothing wrong at all with a bit of stress. Positive stress, some people used to call it eustress, is stress where you have the capacity to handle the challenges that you're given. That's really good to do. It only becomes a problem when you don't have the capacity to handle all the stuff that's chucked at you. That's when it's an issue. So if you can drive down those paths, and Louise hinted about it before, about her husband, that's where this handling the positive stress comes from. That's a brilliant thing to do. Drive that middle path. Get the self-efficacy, and you're really onto something in terms of starting to dare positively. And it feeds into the environment we do as well. Every job, whatever it happens to be, from a deep sea diver to a window cleaner, it doesn't matter, requires art. And that is autonomy, resource, and trust. Are you left to get on with the job in your way? Or have you got somebody insisting that you don't do it that way because the book says you have to do it like that? You have to maintain your life to a pattern. Do you have the resources to do the job? And that's not just hardware. That's access to people that you need, time to do the job, the ability to nip out if you need to and get certain elements, which feeds into the last element, which is trust, which is possibly the most abused term in business. People talk about we trust our people all the time. Very few do. Most organizations will infantilize their staff. For example, we have Dress Down Friday. I'd like Dress Down Tuesday. We can't have Dress Down Tuesday. We ought to dress down on a Friday here. Or we'd like a drink after it and have a drink at lunchtime. Certainly bloody not. Trust is an incredibly hard thing to give because we're not used to doing it. And if ever, for example, you hear the words, "this call may be monitored for training purposes," there ain't no trust there, Buster, none at all. Now look at this. This is a home life. I didn't prepare this slide, somebody else did. So what mask is being worn here? This home life is wonderful. This is the kind of home life that gives you a platform for not just satisfaction and happiness, but also the ability to dare, where people feel relaxed and authentic, where they feel psychologically safe, all the things you see on that screen. But if home isn't like that, and art is just as important at home, if you don't feel that you have the trust of the people around you, if you don't have, let's say, the time as part of your resource, and if you don't have the autonomy because you're being nitpicked everywhere you go, then your environment is not set up, never mind for happiness, but not set up for daring. So all of these things, to go back to an earlier question, yes, it's partly genetic, but you can see here how incredibly contextual and environmental these things are as well.
Another wee poll for us. So, before I launch this poll, I want to ask yourselves, what's your biggest barrier? What's stopping you the most? Is it the fear of failing? Perhaps lack of confidence, or maybe you don't know where to start? Perhaps it's waiting until you've got more time or money, fear of what others think, or perhaps there's something else. So as you answer this poll, just think about what you most resonate with. So we've got the results through. I think everyone's replied, and I'm going to share them all. Very interesting. So the biggest response is waiting until I have more time or money, and then it's don't know where to start, and then fear, that big scary word, fear of what others will think. Over to you, Louise. What do you think?
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Vicky. So now we're going to ask you a question. We don't expect you to answer this out loud, but maybe just think to yourself, rhetorical question, what dream are you putting off right now? There must be something that you're thinking about, that dream that sits on your shoulder and never goes away. Is it starting a business or a side hustle? It could be changing career. It could be writing, creating, or launching something. It could be improving your health or your well-being. It could be going on an adventure, traveling, or having that life adventure that you've always wanted to do. Or you may just not know. Have a think about that, because the next question is going to hold you to account.
And our next week, yeah, thanks, Louise. So the dare. So after today, are you going to take, or when will you take one action towards your dream? Is it going to be today, this week, this month? Perhaps you're thinking about it, or you're going to think about it, or hopefully, you never know, have you already started it? So I will launch this poll and starting to get the replies in. I'm going to share these results, really interesting. So most importantly, but the biggest one is most people have said they've already started, or they're going to think about it, or it's going to be this month. This is quite instantaneous. I love the urgency of this. That's really good. What do you think, everyone?
I think it's fab that there's some people in the audience that thinks that they have already started in terms of following that dream. So it must have inspired them, must have did something. Well done, Craig.
Well, that's down to me. But I think what is interesting as we come to the end of the presentation part of what we're talking about is look at the sort of psychological takeaways. Now, there are three things really that we might want to consider. And the first is that nothing we have seen is fixed. If you go back to personality, the most intractable personality trait is extroversion, introversion. You are more or less extrovert. But even that can be changed over time. So we can shift from a dreaming state to a daring state and all the patches in between. We can improve well-being. We can improve leadership skills. We can get ourselves in harness with people that we trust and that we like and drive ideas forward. And we've learned that a little bit of self-doubt is quite a useful thing. Too much is debilitating. Just as self-belief is a great thing, but not in an overabundance. What we're looking for is Bandura's self-efficacy, quite a lot of self-belief, but usefully seasoned with self-doubt so that we can build realism into it. Our own, if you like, Julius Caesar's slave, whispering into our ear that to remember we are human. And if you manage to get these things, if you are able to dream and to understand those dreams and to harness them and to use them usefully, And if you can use risk logically, if you can forget the stupidity of trust your gut instinct and start to apply logic, and if you can then build your identity so that they are congruent, then you have the best basis possible for successful dares. And the person that I know best for taking dares is Mrs. Lavaroni. So I will pass you across to Louise so she can explain precisely how she's done it.
Thanks, Craig. So for years, I actually dreamed of living in the sunshine. And I actually think this is something to do with living in Scotland, where you have, sunshine for probably 5 days out of the 360 days of the year, and a Scottish summer that barely reaches double digits. And it actually reminds me of a story of a young girl, because when she was born, she was actually gifted an umbrella. And it wasn't until years later she was told, and they explained to her the reason behind this gift. And they said, it's going to be the most used present, because if you stay in Scotland, you'll use it for the rest of your life. Needless to say, over the years, I've developed a fantastic collection of umbrellas, all gifted from Scottish friends and family who clearly thought the same. I quickly realised after graduating from university that nobody was going to hand me this dream on a plate, and I had to design it for myself. So I started on that journey. And a bit like Goldilocks and the Three Bears, the story went like this. I tried America, but that was too competitive. I then tried Germany, but that was too structured. So I finally tried Italy, and that was just right. The only problem is, now I need to outrun the pizza, the pasta, and the gelato. And this is very much a work in progress dream for me, to get fitter and not fatter. But that is super difficult living in Italy. You should try it. The other dream I'm working on is to be the best version of myself, so that when I look in the mirror, I can actually look and feel proud of the woman staring back at me, both mentally and physically. Living in Italy, I'm also dreaming just now of cooler climates, because this week has seen some challenging temperatures up to 38 degrees. The heat exception aside though, my life has had a full upgrade, and I mean a full upgrade, since moving to Italy. And that only happened because I moved from dreaming to daring.
Questions. Yes, I love the fact that we have some questions. If you've still not popped your question down in the chat, you've still got a wee bit more time. So let's go through them. The first one that we have is from Dave Stewart. So to what extent is our learned experience, which we often call intuition, a valid point for decision making? I guess it is about self-awareness of this.
Intuition is never a valid basis for making a decision. Never. It is slightly better than chance. If you toss a coin, it's about 0.5 of a chance, 50-50. Intuition is about 0.54. And the reason that it's no better than tossing a coin is because we feed our biases into it. We tend to remember when intuition was right, forget all about when it was wrong. I've got a really good gut instinct. No, you haven't. Never trust your gut instinct. Apply logic at all times. The only time you should ever go on gut instinct is if there is absolutely nothing left.
Thank you, Craig. Our next question, this was actually sent in just before the event earlier this week, was many entrepreneurs credit gut instinct for big risks. Is that reliable or mostly attribution bias and confirmation traps? And how can we test it?
Yes, it is precisely bias. We said before, gut instinct is no basis for anything. There is, I'll give you a differentiation, so I'm not answering the same question twice if it will help. There is a difference between ingrained skill and intuition, something that becomes second nature. If you're a brilliant, let's use driving as an example. If you're a brilliant Formula One driver, it's not intuition that's taking you around those bends. They're not necessarily certain of what you're doing. It's the ingrained skill that you've got through practice, an ingrained talent that gives you instant response. is a very useful thing to be able to rely on. That's great. And you can think about your own driving, for example, where you go from A to B on a simple journey, and we don't even think about the journey. We just get there at the other end. Well, intuition, that's skill. Different thing altogether.
Thank you so much, Craig. Our next question is from Billiana. How do you move from analysing and preparing yourself to make the right decision to actually taking action instead of staying in analysis mode? So that's a really good question.
It is a really good question. I must stop dominating this. There's something called if-then scenario. And the if-then scenario starts to reify your thoughts and helps to prevent this circling and never finishing. First of all, let's realise that nothing's ever going to be perfect. If you act, you never put on the best performance. It's always going to be better the day after the play run is finished. It's the same in work. So if the boss from Microsoft rings on Monday, then I will send out a proposal that day. If my mother comes home from Ireland, I will pick her up and talk about how we're going to get over the family issue with the dogs. Right? Whatever it happens to be, it doesn't matter. If then start to give you actions that you can't back out of that have to be done. Because nothing is perfect, and it never will be. But when you have a solution that's ready to go, then go with it whenever possible. And I think, Louise, you're the business person here. You're so talented in that. Do you have anything to add to that?
I'd definitely add something, Craig. I'd say the 80-20 rule springs to mind. At the end of the day, things don't need to be perfect. You just need to get started. So if you're 80% right, get yourself out of that analysis mode and actually go ahead and have the confidence. Do all the things that we talked about previously, where I mentioned that, action builds confidence. So the more you take decisions and you do things, you become more confident, and that certainly helps you to make better decisions. The other thing I would say as well is get yourself an accountability partner, because they're great for holding the mirror up to you. So if you're sitting, questioning something, get somebody who's going to hold the mirror up to you and start to challenge you and ask you, what you're doing, and almost feedback to you and be that mirror. As you say, talk to people is super important to get the feedback.
Fabulous point.
Absolutely. Our next question. So many approaches focus on behaviours. My view is that this can often be a symptom of the operating environment as well as identity nurture management. Why are organisations or systems such as Insight so widely used or misused and seem to focus on a space that delivers little value? Easy to buy, seductive sales stories, or simplistic colour badging?
That's a lovely question. And yes, too much emphasis is placed on behaviour. I'll give you an example. Disney, a really good example here. People that work for Disney often have to go into character. You have to be Minnie Mouse or goofier it happens to be. And there is a really difficult line that employees walk there. And they call it going robot. They don't want to say, no, I'm not going to do it, because that gets them in trouble with the job. But by the same token, they don't want to be completely goofy or completely Minnie Mouse, because that looks like they're sucking up to the management, and they get in trouble with the people they work with. So that's hence going robot, treading this middle line. It's not how people behave all the time that counts. It's about what goes on inside and about congruence between those two things. If you want people to behave at work and you want them to have that congruence, then just remember art. It's really simple, or rat or tar, it doesn't really matter. Art, autonomy, resource, and trust. Don't muck about. Don't say we're going to put in this system. Does it provide those three things? If it does, it's a good system. If it doesn't, it isn't good enough. It's really that simple. Louise, anything you'd like to add to that?
No, brilliant. That's a great point. And I love the acronym ART. It's something that I think we can all remember, and it applies both in work, but also in our personal lives, because if you don't have that autonomy,
absolutely does.
And trust, then, yep.
Absolutely. Another question from Billiana. She's asked, just if we have time, which of course we do, always for you, Billiana, what daily habit has the biggest impact in helping you becoming someone who dares rather than just dreams? I love that. And Louise, I think that might be one for you. Someone who did dream and is now currently daring her life away.
Yeah. So just remind me the question again.
Yep. What daily habit has had the biggest impact on helping you becoming someone that who dares rather than just dreams.
So I think a lot of this comes down to actually, like you say, about consistency and forming habits. So every day, if you get up and you do the same thing, you know, that builds that mental memory and gets you going. And one of the things that I'm trying to do just now with my Garmin watch is actually like a 5K run. And it actually gives me a plan that says every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I need to go out and do my 5K. So that in itself is creating a daily habit for me, or a bi-daily habit every second day, going out and doing the run. So it's super important to create these little things for you so that you understand and set yourself these targets that you can then measure yourself against to get outside your comfort zone. And just remember that, you know, habits, you need to work at it. You need to put in the time and the effort.
So yeah, no, I think you're right though. The daily habit is you have to be consistent each and every day with your routines, what you're doing, and being accountable for yourself, and just keep going, just keep doing it. Just getting up in the morning, having a routine, keeping to that routine, and just do it. I think that's a really good daily habit to give yourself, and that just comes back to your own accountability and
Yeah.
ingraining that in yourself. So no, absolutely. So another question before we go on to Dave's question, something that might follow on from your daily habit is, how do you pursue balancing work goals with family responsibilities? And that's so important, and I think we can all really resonate with that.
Oh, yes. Who do you want that to go to, Vicky?
Ooh, perhaps Louise and myself. Louise, do you want to? What have you done? How have
Give
you
this one a go.
balanced?
Yeah, I think the important thing for me is to create boundaries, right? So create boundaries between your work life and your personal life. And that might be that, you know, you don't answer emails on a weekend, that when you go home at night and you shut that laptop, that you do that. And you share that with your team so that that becomes the cultural norm, so that the team's not expecting any, you know, emergencies or anything coming out the blue, that you're not going to disturb them on the weekend. And that's really important for trust. But it's also really important for you to have that personal time, because your private time is personal time. And it's important to try and not let the two cross over or overlap too much, because then you don't have that personal space to regenerate and to refresh.
Absolutely, you're right. And Craig, from a psychology or technical perspective, have you got a little bit of input on how to balance your work goals with family responsibilities?
Yes, it is a really difficult thing, and it's one of these situations where there ain't no perfect answer. But you go back to people, best medicine being other people, and the best thing you can do to get that balance right is to talk to the people around you. You know, if you find you've got too much to do at work, if you find you don't have enough responsibility at home, or if you find you're completely stretched out at home and completely stretched at work, and you're burning candles and not sleeping, then what do you do about it? It's
Yeah,
probably that you can't do much on your own and you need help from other people. So ask for it. The more you ask the trusted people around you, the people that can help, the better the answers you can get. And it's a very simple answer to say, well, if you don't like your job, move. But it's often really possible to change the job a little bit and to change your home life a little bit where you are by talking to people that matter. You know, people like to help. If you ask people to help, generally they will. Don't be afraid to do it. Nothing's perfect. But by involving other people that you trust in any decision you want to make, life gets a little bit better.
absolutely, Craig, and I can absolutely personally resonate with that for myself. Just communicating with your partner, at home, communicating with your family, even your young children, your older children, and communicating with your colleagues and your bosses, so that they can understand where your life is, work, personal, and how that all matters. And because everybody has their own priorities, and it's just a case of, like you say, reaching out, asking for that help, or communicating it and getting it off your chest, and you'll find their balance will start to kind of weigh itself out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so something that I can maybe share with was last year was my first time obviously working in hospitality, and working on Christmas Day was a big challenge for myself, having to do that for the first time and having to leave my 7-year-old daughter at home in Christmas morning. So that was a really big struggle to deliver that at home, but also have my own priorities and responsibilities at work. So what I did was I took her with me. So we got up in the morning, we got all dressed up, went up to Ingliston, and it was literally the most magical place at Christmas time. It looks like the North Pole landed up there. So it was really good to drive up. I showed her what I was doing that day, and all the guests were arriving. The energy was really tangible. And she left. I stayed. And she had a fantastic day. I had a great day. I really did thoroughly enjoy it. And I came home at night and we celebrated the rest of the night together, and it was fantastic. And I don't have that same worry for this Christmas because, you know, both are equally as important. Well, yeah, your family's very important, but your work's also really important. But that's something that really helped with me. And that was all about, exactly like you say, Craig, communicating and talking to people. And that, yeah, both balances.
It's a great point, Vicky. Really good point.
Another question, let me see. Yeah, from Dave. So there is a two-way deal to be struck, I think. We and our people need to understand the business's needs too. There are some practitioners who interpret psychological safety as a one-way entitlement, almost a shield to accountability. Does not PS enable more accountability and momentum and delivery? Okay, what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's another really good point, I think, from Dave there. I mean, accountability is entirely a two-way street, and I think people tend to forget that. We tend to look at people outside our own group, if you go back to those boundaries we were talking about before, impermeable boundaries, and people tend to ask for rights rather than accept responsibilities. And again, it's about crossing those boundaries and talking to other people so that you understand where the other person's coming from, so that you share the resources, the R in that art that we spoke about before. Because as you spoke about, Vicky, as well, about the communication, that increases understanding. And if you increase people's understanding across the boundaries, then you start to improve things like performance, and you start to improve people's lives in the workplace. And by doing that, I'll tell you, I've been studying this thing for the thick end of 30 years now, and I have never yet found people at work who are too happy. Being happy correlates entirely with high performance and high productivity. And being miserable, being pernickety and telling people this is how things will be done, you must do it this way, is entirely consistent with depressed performance and depressed people. So, another good point from Dave, yeah. And Louise, would you have anything to add to that? You're doing this, you worked at Amazon, and the reputation Amazon have got varies from which part of the company it's in.
Yeah, no, I think you've answered it perfectly. Nothing else to add there.
Okay.
And our very final last question is, so for someone stuck in the planning stage of a big career or business move, what's one evidence-based psychology that can reliably move them?
Would you just say the start of that again, Vicky, please?
Oh, sorry. For someone stuck in the planning stage of a big career or business move, what's one evidence-based psychology that reliably moves them?
It's the same as it answered before. Talk to people that you trust and like. If you're stuck in a rut, often other people can see things before you can. I'm not a biblical person, but you may have heard, take the beam out of your own eye before you take the mote out of somebody else's. Like, get somebody that understands you to look at you, talk to you, sit you down, and talk through your ideas with you. It is one of the most, if not the most valuable thing you can do in life, not just in business. I was playing what would you take to a desert island game in the pub with somebody the other day. And she was taking everything beginning with A. She was taking apples, and she was taking aardvark and artichokes and everything else. And so I thought, well, I want to take an aperitif, and I couldn't. And I could not work out how she could take A's, and I couldn't. And I was throwing all kinds of things in. I didn't understand what was going on at all. So I went away, and the first thing was write things down, which I didn't mention is quite a useful thing to do. You write things down, and that's often a very good way. And you can see when you write something down, when you take a different approach, that's one way of fixing it. But if that struggles, then ask somebody else. Get two brains on the problem. To go back to Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, phone a friend, ask the audience, whatever it is. You get more input and you get a better answer. So that involves people.
I think that's a brilliant point, Craig, in terms of writing it down, because it builds clarity, right? And it gives you confidence because you've got something that's written down there that you can hold yourself to account, and you can go back and you can check to see that you're making progress. So great point.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, that's the last of our questions. So if we'll move on. Feedback, the most important, valuable thing that we can get from you guys, thank you so much, as well as your questions, is your feedback. If you can scan this QR code, I can also send you the link. If you'd like me to send you the link, I can do that as well. And please give us your feedback so that we can build on our next possible events. And if you want to get involved in our events, you can contact us. Here are the contact details. So you've got your QR codes for our LinkedIn pages, Craig's and Louise's websites.
Oops, sorry.
And jumping ahead, Craig.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
I'm a rubbish driver.
And our email address to get in contact with us. So if you've got any questions, if you want to reach out to any one of us, absolutely, please don't hesitate to reach out. This is our contact info. But
Brilliant.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you, everybody, for spending your Thursday evening with us, Bree. We have loved it. I hope you have.
Vicky, can I just add one thing before we close? On the screen, the team will see that we've built a LinkedIn private group here. It's called the Dream to Dare Devils Community. And we set this up and we're going to opt you in unless you opt out. So at the end, obviously, you'll get access to lots of articles, different thoughts. And really what we built this for was to focus on the dreams that you talk about, because this was all about dreaming to dare, right? So we want to understand your dreams and understand how to help you make them true. So we'll set up this community, we'll add you into it, and we look forward to hearing your thoughts and your feedback. And as Vicky says, if you've got any emails, we've got an email address there that you can contact us on LinkedIn or contact us on our individual web pages, because we want to stay connected.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks
Thank
all.
you very much, all. Thank you for your time. Have a good
nice
night.
weekend. Bye.
Bye now.